All right, let's use AI to enhance your journey and create some storytelling magic. We're going to be using the prompts in the downloadable guide that I've given you today. And if you're watching this recording later, I'll also include that. I'm going to be using Omni to tell the story about my family. And the illustrations that you see along the way are done through DALL-E. I'm actually using my own GPT that I've built inside GPT-4, and that includes a lot of knowledge that I've given it myself. So I've uploaded things like PDF and documents that contain a lot of the data that I need it to know, and it has already web browsing capability. It can create images and it can analyze data and interpret code. What we're going to do is visualize your ancestor, request a genre, and request a preamble. And I've set these out as steps from the document. Let me just show you the document itself so that you know what this is the document. And I've set it out as a 12-step process, as you can see here. And within each of the steps, there's a little prompt. I know how hard it is sometimes if you're just starting with AI tools, you need a hand. So these are just example prompts that you could use. And in my demonstration, I'll now show you how I've modified these to suit my story. Let's go to ChatGPT. This is me asking for that image. For me, it helps spark what I'm going to do next. You don't have to do this. It's just a nice to do. But when I asked it to give me an image that depicts ancestors of the family arriving in Australia by ship in 1900, it sparked something in me. I thought I could tell the story of my Allery family's migration this way. The next thing to do was define the thematic direction of my story about my family's arrival and suggest a genre and subgenre. And I've actually given it a link to where I've got part of that story already in my blog, which I keep at weare.xyz. So it can accept that type of input as well. And you'll notice here that it searched that site. And it's come up with the theme, historical fiction, family saga. Makes sense. So just popping back to the next section, request a preamble. So now we're looking at a prompt such as create a preamble for my family history chapter, including the title, protagonist, antagonist, main and supporting characters, themes, etc. Now, this is getting into some of the tools that you'll need for storytelling, not just ancestral stories. Now, some of this you might not have even considered before. So coming over to chat, once I've asked it for the genre, I've now asked it to create a preamble. But notice what I've done. I've put the basic prompt here, as you saw in the document, but I've added some data. Just data that I had about my family, and just put it in as dot points. Its next task, it came up with the preamble for this story about my migration to Australia in 1949. Now, protagonists, you just substitute the word ancestors there. My mum, my dad, and all the kids. And here's me at the end. All of these people are now passed away, except me. The themes include resilience and adaptation, family unity, cultural transition. So it's now giving me ideas about what I can include in this story. It now looks at plot points, such as the departure, the journey itself, the arrival, the settlement, and what legacy. Some specifics like time and location. So it's picked this up from my documentation. and it's specifically about 1949. It doesn't know where we left from or which port we set foot in, but I can adjust that, of course, as I go. And I don't know where it got Bayswater from. That should be Mooney Ponds, which is where we initially settled. So it makes mistakes, and you need to make sure that you go back over what it's telling you and make it your own and make sure it's factual. Now we're thinking about, oh, I think I'd like to write a book. What can I put on the back cover for this story? And here's your prompt down here. Write a compelling back cover description for my family history chapter based on the preamble. So you'll see what's happening. We're step by step improving and adding to the story. Here is its response to that prompt about a back cover description. So just a short paragraph where it suggests this amount of text. So embark on an emotional voyage with the Allery family as they leave post-war England in search of a brighter future in Australia. Reasonable opening. I like it. Winifred and Cecil, along with their children, face the challenges and triumphs of resettling in a new land. Might be a little flowery. I might change some of that. But you'll see how it's getting the information and transforming it into narrative, which is what we're about in storytelling. And coming back to what kind of writing do we want? We want to be able to create a style for ourselves. So what do we want it to do to help us with that? So it could be that we ask it to write in a style that combines historical narrative with personal anecdotes, similar to a memoir. Let's have a look at the next section. For this one, I've added in a snippet of a passenger list that I have in my records and asked it to create an outline for the family history chapter based on the preamble and include information from the passenger list. So it's done that quite neatly underneath, picked up all the people, and it's listed the details that it's found for each of those people on the passenger list with the ages correctly transcribed, as far as I can tell. Picked up the fact that we came out on the Orchides steamship line is the Orient, and the date was 1949. Then it goes into a little bit about the voyage, and here we are seeing just the beginnings of what we might write up about the sea voyage and our experiences. It goes on to talk about our arrival in Australia. And I do recall that because we've got a photo of us arriving. It was a large family and it was posted in the newspapers at the time. So a useful thing to have. But you can see how we're going here. We'll go on and look at request an intro or prologue. This time, we might want to create a bit of a hook that grabs our readers right up front. So a typical prompt here might be, write an intriguing prologue for my family history chapter based on the outline. Coming back over to ChatGPT. And here we go. Write a story about the adventures of a young immigrant in a style that combines historical narrative with personal anecdotes. So you can see I've modified the prompt somewhat, as you can do as well. So I want it written from the point of view of me as the youngest family member. So here we are. The decision to leave. It was a crisp morning in Kingston, Surrey. I don't think I'd say that. I couldn't remember that, but I'd certainly consider that I could see us around the table, perhaps as Mum and Dad told us the news that we were migrating to Australia. And at the tender age of 3, I didn't really fully grasp the gravity, but I could see the excitement and apprehension in my family. So just that little bit there gave me enough to start thinking about the next segment. And you can see how it's gone on now to give me a snippet about each of the chapters, what I can actually include. The next step is to develop the first section, your family history story. And we want it to ensure that it flows on neatly from the prologue. So it did quite a fine job of that, or it even includes an epilogue. So for the prologue, here it is. Imagine standing on the deck of a grand ocean liner, the salty breeze ruffling your hair as you gaze at the endless expanse of the sea. It's 1949 and a young girl named Carol clutches her mother's hand, both excited and nervous about the journey ahead, and so on. A little flowery, but once again, I can change some of that. And it often uses this word, you'll see it frequently, delve into the story. And so you can change some of the language for that as well. But writing a prologue to your own story is an interesting way to get started because you're really focused on your audience. You want to enable your hook, especially if you want your grandchildren to read the story. And then we go on to build on the scenes and build the sections, develop characters, and even edit and improve things that we've written in each one. This document can be your guide as to how you approach the whole process. Let's see what we've got here. We'll go right to the end. And this is the finished product, which has been edited from the original. So this will now be about the journey. And it's given me little subheadings. And these become quite important if you're thinking about sharing your story on weare.xyz, because the structure of the storytelling tools there enable you to put in pieces one by one, such as that, and then add a little image to go with it. It then goes on to talk about experiences, misadventures, and mischief. And this is one of the memories that my mum would tell us, that my twin brothers, aged 8, were very adventurous spirits, but they were often caught in the adult swimming pool where they shouldn't be. Despite the strict rules, they managed to sneak in several times, diving and splashing around until they were inevitably caught and scolded by both the crew and our exasperated mother. So that's a true memory that my mum would often tell me. And of course, my brother, his story was more about the fact as a young man at 20, the ship was filled with young women. John, with his charming smile and friendly demeanour, spent much of his time pursuing these pretty girls, forming fleeting friendships that helped pass the long days at sea. That too is true. And my sisters, 2 of them, were often in charge of me, keeping an eye on me. And for me, as the youngest member, this is the little story about all I wanted was a sailor doll, a token that would remind me of the brave men who sailed the seas, and finishes up with the mother's burden. Because in this story, my mum was with us, but our dad had come out to Australia the year before, so his was a different story. So my mum was on a test of endurance, managing 6 children on a bustling ship. So that is then the end of this process in using all of the 12 steps so far. This is the story of the Allery family's journey, migration to Australia in 1949, and the link is here.